So today we are going to talk about the data management importance and also how to use the Dmp tool. So my name is Hao Yonglan, and I'm the engineering and data librarian at the University of Louisville Extreme Library. So welcome everyone. Okay. So first, let's talk about the overview of today's session. The first thing we're going to talk about is why is the data management important, and what is the data management plan? And then in the later half of the session, we will walk through on how to use the Dmp tool step by step. Okay. First thing, let's talk about the importance of the data management. So why is the data management important? So the data sharing is like data management, which allows for reproducibility, the transparency, and the data reuse in research. And the data sharing is made much more easier if the data are managed well from the start of any research projects. Okay. So right now, there are many data management and sharing mandates from many federal agencies and the journals, for example, the PLOS, the Nature, and JDAP partners, and some funders, including the National Science Foundation and the National Institutes of Health. And there's also an Office of Science and Technology Policy mandate at February 2013. So yeah, so below you can see some logos from some big funders, federal agencies. Yeah, okay. So yes, for example, for the National Institute of Health, so the NIH has recently issued a new final NIH policy for data management and sharing, which will require the NIH-funded researchers to prospectively submit a plan outlining how scientific data from their research will be managed and shared. And on the January 25th, 2023, which is basically next year, so it's happening pretty soon, the new policy will come into effect and replace the old one, which is 2003 NIH data sharing policy currently in effect. The next one is the National Science Foundation. Beginning in January 2011 and following the required period of notification and comment, NSF implemented a data management plan requirement. All proposals must include a data management plan, abbreviated as DMP, and NSF will not evaluate any proposal that is lacking a DMP. So right now, more federal agencies are requiring the researchers to submit a data management plans along with their research proposals. So that's why the data management plan is getting more important right now. Okay, so we just covered about the importance of data management and also some founders requirements. So next, let's talk specifically about what is a data management plan. Okay, so what is a data management plan? It is a document that describes what the researchers will do with your data during your research and after you complete your project. So it's basically a description of your research journey, like what data will you be collecting and how will you manage them, and then what is your strategy to preserve them. So that's basically throughout your research life cycle. So then why do we need to prepare data management plans? So preparing a good data management plans can save lots of time and also can increase the research efficiency. Additionally, the most importantly, the DMP can satisfy the funders' requirements in order to get the funding grants from the federal agencies. And it can also make the research reproducibility and sharing easier. By sharing the research data and also to make it in open access, the researchers can allow other peers and also collaborators to do the secondary analysis on the same research data in order to produce further discovery. So that's the importance. So that's why DMP can ignite the innovation by making the research data more reproducible and shareable. In addition to that, a data management plan is also a living document that keeps your plan current. And also, you might also need to incorporate the changes if you if there are any, for example, the storage changes. For example, if you change your data repository, you need to also make sure that this update has also been reflected in the data management plans, and use this as a guide for the daily activities, for the daily research activities. Yeah. Okay, so how to start? So let's say, for example, we start with the blank, right? We don't just, there's not anything to get started. So the first good strategy is to start with the small and simple. The first thing is to document what you know now, just to make a simple draft or any plans to talk about what kind of information do you have right now, and also to share the plan with your research team. And most importantly is to avoid the procrastination and immobilization, and you start right away in order to get a good data management plans. Okay, so next let's talk about the components of a basic DMP. So the first component is the types of the data, and the next one is the data and metadata standards, and third one is the policies for the DMP, and the fourth one is the plans for the data preservation. And the final component is, of course, the budget, because we need the fundings and the budget in order to, for example, to store the research data in the institutional data repository, and also to find some data curators in order to curate the data most effectively and make sure that it satisfies the funders' requirements and the security concerns and or other relevant relevant issues. Okay, so let's talk about the first component, which is the types of the data. So there are following several questions that you might need to consider when writing about the types of data in the DMP. So the first thing is we need to figure out what types of data will actually be produced during the research lifecycle, and what is the relationship for the data to the existing data. And next is we need to figure out how and when and where will the research data be captured or created. And after that, we also need to figure out how will the data be processed. So will it be processed through the sensors or through any computing machines? So after figuring this out, we also need to consider the quality assurance and the quality control measures. And the purpose of this section, this part, is to make sure that there are no any data loss during the data collection, or make sure that the data were collected most accurately and efficiently, to make sure that there are no any errors or any issues produced during the data collection. And the next one is the security. So something to talk about here is the version control and also the backing up. So we need to make sure that we have a backup file for the research data, so that we can make sure that the research data is stored in another safe place, for example, the cloud. And the final component to consider is that who will be responsible for data management during and after project. This is very important because we want to make sure that there will always be someone to take care for the research data throughout the research life cycle, because this is usually part of ignored by many people, because there are not many project changes. For example, there are some people just not working on this project anymore, and then there's basically no manager for this research data anymore. So that creates a big problem. So that's why we need to specify who will be responsible throughout the research data lifecycle. So the second one is the data and metadata standards. So the metadata is basically a data about data. So some questions to consider here is that what metadata are needed in order to make the research data meaningful? And how will you create or capture this metadata? And finally, why have you chosen this particular standards, this metadata standards and approaches for the metadata? Okay, so these are the questions for the metadata and data standards. Okay, so next one, let's talk about the policies for the access, sharing, and the reuse for the research data. So some questions to consider below are, for example, the first one, are you under any obligation to share data? And how and when and where will you make this research data available? And what is the process for gaining access to the data? And we also need to figure out the parties who owns the copyright and or intellectual property. And will you retain the right before opening data to wider use? And how long do you plan to do so? Are any permissions restrictions necessary for the research data? And also the embargo periods for political, commercial, and patent reasons. Yeah, so basically the embargo periods is the periods where you don't want your research data to be publicly available. So that's also another important factor to take into consideration. And the next one is the ethical and privacy issues. So are there any concerns that you have about the privacy or any ethics issues about your research data? So this is the place to ask that question and to make a good plan about it. And the final one is also very important. How should your data be cited? Just like the normal, the literature citations, you also want your research data, because this is your research data. So you want to make sure that your data are cited correctly so that your works are reflected by others' works. So that's why the data citation is also very important. Okay, so we just covered the policies. So next, let's talk about the plans for the archiving and preservation of the research data. So what data will be preserved for the long term, and how long do you plan to do that? And also we need to figure out where will the data be preserved. For example, in the institutional data repositories or in some disciplinary, open access disciplinary repositories, for example, in the NIH data repository. And next one is what kinds of data transformations need to occur before the preservation. So for example, are there any data cleaning tasks or any the data changing the data types needed in order to make this make your research data more preservable, basically. Yeah. Okay, so the next question is what metadata will be submitted with the data sets? And who will be responsible for preparing the data for preservation? So probably some relevant parties for preparing the data for preservation is probably some data curators. Yeah. And the final question is that who will be the main contact person for the archived data? So that if other people have questions about the archived data, so they can have the right person to contact to ask any questions about this archived research data. So yeah, so these are some of the important questions to consider for the archiving and the preservation stage for the data management plans. Okay. So the final one is the budget. So we need to, of course, think about the costs of the data preparation, because it involves lots of manpower, the hardware, the software, and also the hiring, or probably hiring more relevant personnel, such as the data curators and also the repository fees, because lots of good data repositories, they are not free, so they actually require the subscription or the submitters to submit a certain amount of fees in order to be to let their research data to be archived in their repositories. And about the how costs will be paid, and of course we need to request additional funding in order to get all of this data preparation and documentation done, yeah, properly. So yeah, so that's basically the stages and also the sections for the data management plans. Yeah. Okay. So next, let's actually directly jump into the Dmp tool, because this is the tool that we are actually going to use in today's session to walk through how to use the Dmp tool to create an effective data management plans. So this is a screenshot of the Dmp tool website. So they actually recently updated their website. So you might see, if you've used this Dmp tool before, you probably you will see a newer like interface, because they just updated their website I think on early March. So yeah, so this is the newest website interface for the Dmp tool. And you can see there are right now about 70,000 users worldwide and 323 participating institutions. And there are about 70,000 plans right now. Yeah, so basically the Dmp tool can help you create a data management plans that meet the requirements of the founders and also promote your research. And you can also see on the right-hand side, so you can just directly enter your email address into the box, and then you can just one thing to note here is that you might need to enter your Louisville email address instead of the personal email address, because the University of Louisville is a participating institution for the Dmp tool. So you may need to like enter your Louisville, the school email address, in order to get access to this Dmp tool, because this will actually ask you to enter your ULink ID and a password after entering your Louisville school email address. Yeah, and on the bottom right-hand side, you can find the link where you can actually go to the Dmp tool. So this is dmptool.org. Okay. So there are some also additional references and the resources that you can refer to, and also to learn more about Dmp tools. So the slides are adapted from the Dmp tool generic slide deck, and below you can find the data management guidance from the NIH, and then the data management guidance from the National Science Foundations. And here are the Dmp tool contact information. The dmptool.org contact us, and here's my email address if you have any questions. And there are other relevant channels to get in touch with the Dmp tool. Okay, yeah, so that's basically concludes our presentation. And next, I'm also going to show you a little bit about where to actually get help on the data management. Okay. So here I just opened a Google Chrome web browser, and you can probably, some of you have already visited this before, but this is the main web page for the U of L libraries. So where you can find all helpful resources to locate the databases, to locate the resources, and also to basically to help you discover the journals, the articles, and books. And here, if you can see under the create, so there's a create small box here, and under the create section, there's a data management resources. So if you click that one, you can see here. So this is the data management library guide, where you can go get all relevant information about, including the data management plans, which we will talk about this shortly after, and then some metadata guidance and preservation, and some suggested public data repositories, and how to store your data, and citing data. Yeah, so, and also some additional resources for you to look at. Yeah, and in addition to that, we also have a separate, if you are a health sciences researcher, we also have additional Konhauser Health Sciences library guide curated by my colleague Danny. Yeah, so this is more subject specific, focused on the health sciences research data management. So yeah, so if you have any questions about this, about health sciences specific data management guidance, feel free to reach out to my colleague Danny. Yeah. Okay, so that's about the data management library guide. So next, let's directly go to the data management plan tool. Okay, so In order to do that, we can just directly like copy that link address. So you can just go to the data management plans, and there's quick tutorials on how to use this website and how to use the data management plan tools. And below, you can find more specific information about the founders' requirements. For example, the Centers for Disease Control, the Department of Defense, and National Aeronautics and Space Administration, and so on. Yeah. Okay. So after that, let's just directly dive into the Dmp tool. Okay. And to do that, I'm just going to copy that link, the dmptool.org. So you can see here. So this is the main webpage I just showed you. Yeah. So I'm just going to type my email address right now. Okay. And then let's just click continue. And then University of Louisville has signed in with the institution to log in. Yeah. And then you can see here. So this is the the authentication page where you can enter your credentials, the username and the password in order to get access to the Dmp tool. Okay. And then you can see here, I'm just gonna select the default option, ask me again if information to be provided to this service changes, and then click access. And then you can see here, so this is the main interface where you can, for the Dmp tool, where you can create new plan and find the specific founders requirements, and also to look for some public DMPs created by other people, so that you can get a general sense about what is the DMP like for other institutions. Okay. So after here, you can find the, this is the upper side, you can find the menu sections. And also if you see where my mouse is currently at on the upper right hand side, so this is my name, and then you can also edit your profile. You can just edit your email address, first name, last name, and the institution, and also the email preferences about this. Yeah. Okay, so let's just return to the dashboard. So this should be the, if you log in through the just the way I did, you probably will see the same interface, because there are no any new records or any data management plans right now. So yeah, so it's pretty a fresh start. Yeah, so you can see here, so this is the dashboard, and we are ready to create the first DMP. Okay, so let's just directly click the create plan here. Okay, so after clicking the creating plan, so you will see this interface where you can enter the specific information about the new plan. Yeah, so it says, before you get started, we need some information about your research project to set you up with the best DMP template for your needs. Okay, so let's say, for example, what research project are you planning? Okay, so in this case, I'm just going to type a sample project. In this case, just for demonstration purpose. Okay, and select the primary research organization. And here, of course, we are the University of Louisville. And then we are going to select the primary funding organization. And for the founder, we are just going to actually explore the NIH. So you can see here, so this National Institutes of Health. And then after confirming that, the Dmp tool asks us, which DMP template would you like to use? So under the drop-down menu, you can find of 3 relevant NIH templates that you can use. For example, the first one is NIH GDS, which is the genomic data sharing, and the next one is the NIH GN. So it is actually the upcoming. So it's upcoming data management plans from the NIH in 2023. Okay. So next one is the old one, which is the NIH generic one. So it's right now it's the current, but it will expire until 2023. Yeah. So yeah, so for demonstration purpose, I'm just going to select the newest one, which is the 2023 updated data management plans. Okay. So after entering the project name, the research organization, the founding organization, and the DMP template. So let's just go ahead and create the plan. Okay. Okay, so before actually diving into the actual actual data management plans, are there any questions so far about anything I just covered? Okay, so if there are no questions, I'm just gonna go ahead to create an actual data management plan. Okay, so here you can see find the title, which is the sample project, and then you can. I'm also gonna click the mark project for testing, practice, or education purposes because we are actually not gonna create an actual data management plan. Okay, so for the project abstract, I'm just gonna just type a sample sentence here. So this is sample abstract. And then for the research domain, I'm just gonna select one of the relevant here. So I'm just gonna select the first one, agricultural biotechnology, and the project start date. So this is the estimated date on which you will actually begin this project. Okay, so here we can just select any actually today is fine, like March 22nd, 2022, and the project end date. So let's just make this to be probably a year long, just to end at the March 2020, March 22nd, 2023. Okay, and here is also another option is that you can select if your research outputs may have some ethical concerns. Yeah, and also the founder we have just selected, which is the National Institutes of Health. And the funding status we can select. So there are 3 status right now. So for the planned, funded, or denied. So right now, since we are in the planning stage, so let's just select planned. And there's also funding opportunity number. So if you have that one, you can just enter that here. And also here is the grant number. You can also enter that. And then below all of this information, you can also, there is a section with related works where you can actually add additional related work for this data management plans. And on the right-hand side, you can find a select guidance where you can actually, to help you write your plan. And Dmp Tool can show you the guidance from a variety of organizations. And then you can select up to 6 peer organizations to see their guidance. Yeah, and then we can just click to see the full list to find all of the institutions that have the DMP, DMPs. Okay. So you can see here, so there are lots of organizations here. For example, the Arizona State University, the Boston University, the Brown University. So here I'm just gonna click just sample several, institutions: Carnegie Mellon University, Cornell University, Duke University, and Harvard University. Okay. So after we have select all of the desired ones, we can just close this window, and then you can see there was there were about 5 organizations, including Dmp Tool, that you can use for the later stages. Yeah. Okay. So after we have entered all of the relevant informations, we can just click save, and then you can see here. You can see a pop-up message here saying that successfully saved the plan. Okay, so which means that you are done. You are saved your project details successfully in the Dmp tool. Okay, so next let's jump to the collaborators. So this is the place where you can add additional collaborators to invite more people to read, edit, or administer your data management plans. So you can see here there are also project contributors, and you can also list the project's principal investigators and those responsible for data management here. Yeah, of course, you can just add contributors with a name, email, ORCID, and affiliations. Yeah, so it's pretty straightforward. And also here you can just invite additional DMP collaborators, and you can just enter their email, and also you can set the permissions here, whether to let them be the co-owner, the editor, or just read only. Yep. So that's the collaborators here. And next, so that's the core part of the data management plans, which is actually writing plan. So you can see here, The Dmp tool says that this plan is based on the NIH GEN DMSP. So it's the 2023 ones template. So it's provided by the National Institutes of Health. So you can just directly work on this one. Okay. So on the below sections, you can find all of the required sections for you to fill out. So the first one is the data type. Okay. So under the data type, so basically you can find there's a briefly describe the scientific data to be managed, preserved, or shared. Yeah, so you can see here. So basically, this is a general summary of the types and estimated amount of scientific data to be generated and or used in the research. And then you can just type here. And there's actually a good NIH specific example answer here. For example, this project will produce what kind of data type, for example, imaging, sequencing, experimental measurements, data generated, obtained from like the media, for example, the instrument, method, survey, experiments, and data will be collected from how many numbers of research participants, and specimens and experiments, and then generating how many data sets, totaling approximate the sizes. Yeah, so this is a good answer that you can adopt in order to fill out this section. And on the right hand side, you can also find all of the relevant guidance from the participating institutions that we just selected. For example, the NIH one, so it has an NIH guidance where it defines the scientific data as the recorded factual material commonly accepted in the scientific community as of sufficient quality to validate and replicate research findings. Yeah, so that's the definitions for the scientific data from the NIH. Yeah. And here you can also find the data formats from the Carnegie Mellon University, the data standards, yeah, and from Harvard University, include the data format. So yeah, so basically, so it varies based on the institutions. So every institutions have their own like data formats and data standards to follow. And we actually, the University of Louisville, we have a data management task force. So we are actually just finished the first round of the draft of the data management policy. So it should be available soon. So that will become the main reference, the main guidance and policy documents for the University of Louisville that you can follow. Okay. So yeah, so here is we just talked about the general summary of the types and estimated amount of scientific data. And next is the description of which scientific data from the project will be preserved and shared. For example, there's also another NIH example answer here. Based on what ethical, legal, technical considerations, the following data produced in the course of the project will be preserved and shared. Or all data produced in the course of the project will be preserved and shared. And on the right-hand side, you can also find all of the relevant, helpful information about this section. For example, from the NIH, NIH does not anticipate that researchers will preserve and share all scientific data generated in the study. Yeah, and you can also find additional guidance from the Cornell University, Carnegie Mellon University, Duke University, yep, and Harvard, yep, okay. So the next one is a brief listing of the metadata, other relevant data, and any associated documentation. And there's a good example answer here. To facilitate interpretation of the data, something like the metadata documentation, protocols, and the data collection instruments will be shared and associated with the relevant data sets. Okay, so that's the first part, which is the data type part. Okay, so next one is the related tools, software, and code. So this is basically an introduction of whether the specialized tools are needed to access or manipulate shared scientific data to support the replication or use, and the names of the needed tools and software. Yeah, and then you can also find that if there are no specialized tools needed to access or manipulate data, so what do you need to do? And also if there are specialized tools needed to access and or manipulate the data, and what do you need to do? So yeah, so It's pretty straightforward, so you can just directly reference their example answers and to fill in the blanks based on your circumstances. Yeah. And on the right hand side, you can also find more like additional guidance about like which data are saved in a digital format can be divided into two general categories. The first one is proprietary. So it's basically the specification of the data encoding format is not related or restricted in some way. And as for the open one, this specification of data encoding format, which can be used and implemented by anyone. Okay, yeah. And the next one is, if applicable, specify how needed tools can be accessed. For example, if it is open source and freely available, or is it generally available for fee in the marketplace? Yeah. And then you can find example answer from the NIH. Yep. So that's the related tools and the software and code section. The next one is the standards section. So it's basically an indication of what standards will be applied to the scientific data and associated metadata. And there are some NIH example answers here. To facilitate their efficient use, all of the data and materials will be structured and described using the following standards. So if there are formal data standards, whenever possible, we will use, for example, the common data elements, standardized survey instruments to structure and organize our data. Yeah, and if there are no formal standards for what data have not yet been widely adopted. However, our data and other materials will be structured and described according to best practices. Yeah. So data will be stored in like common and open formats. So there are some other blanks that you can fill out. And on the right-hand side, so the NIH guidance states that while many scientific fields have developed and adopted common data standards, others have not. So in such cases, the plan may indicate that no consensus data standards exist for the scientific data and the metadata to be generated, preserved, and shared. Okay, so that's the standards section. Are there any questions so far about anything I just covered? Okay, so if there are no questions, I'm just going to talk about the next one, which is the data preservation, access, and associated timelines. So there are various ways in which to disseminate, preserve, and make scientific data discoverable. So so you can just list some of the name of the repositories where scientific data and metadata arising from the project will be archived. Yeah. For example, from the NIH, all data sets that can be shared will be deposited in which repository. To add some appropriate NIH-supported data repositories or any additional appropriate subject or disease repositories. Yeah. For example, there's a popular data repository. It's called Derived. So it's the Derived data sets resulting from this research will be shared via the generalist repository Derived, which provides metadata, persistent identifiers, and long-term access. Yeah. So you can see on the right-hand side, so NIH has provided additional information to assist in selecting suitable repositories for scientific data resulting from the funded research. So these are additional guidance that you can refer to. Okay, so that's the data preservation parts. And the next one is the access, distribution, and the reuse considerations. So for the NIH, they expect that in drafting plans, researchers maximize the appropriate sharing of scientific data generated from NIH-funded or conducted research to make sure that they are consistent with the privacy, security, informed consent, and proprietary issues. So describe any applicable factors affecting subsequent access, distribution, or reuse of scientific data related to the, for example, informed consent or the privacy protections. And the next question is whether access to scientific data derived from humans will be controlled. So this is also important because we need to make sure that any restrictions imposed by federal, tribal, or state laws or any existing agreements we need to that these requirements are met. And any other considerations that may limit the extent of data sharing. For example, for the researchers working with human subjects data, and in order to ensure participant consent for data sharing, the IRB, paperwork, and informed consent documents will include language describing plans for data management and sharing data, and describing the motivation for sharing, and explaining that personal identifying information will be removed. Yeah, so that's the consideration for the human subjects data. Okay, so the final part of the to write the data management plan is the oversight of the data management and sharing. So this is basically a section where you can indicate how compliance with the plan will be monitored and managed, and also the frequency of the oversight, and by which party, by the person, the titles, and the roles. Yeah. So this section you can just the following individuals will be responsible for data collection, management, storage, retention, and dissemination of project data, including the updating and revising the data management and sharing plan when necessary. Yeah, so there's a sample language for budgeting requirements. Yeah, so this project includes the following costs associated with data management and sharing. So this is the language that you can adopt in order to apply for the funding for the data management. So for the data curation and development of related documentation, the project is requesting the amount of money, and these funds will allow us to prepare data for sharing, including the identification of data, the incorporation of metadata to ensure discoverability, and the data transfer process to which repository for preservation and access. And an additional cost is required to cover data deposit fees for which repository, and which will cover how many years of hosting. Yeah. So all of this information are very important for you to fill out in order to get a comprehensive data management plans. Okay. So on the right hand side, you can also find additional guidance from the NIH and other selected institutions. Okay. So this basically concludes the part to write actual data management plans. Are there any questions? Okay, so if there are no questions, I'm just going to go to the research output. So this is a place you can actually list your anticipated research outputs. For example, you can add a new research output and to for example, what kind of output is it? For example, is it audio visual, or is it a data set, or is it a software, or is it a text? So yeah. So that's the research output section. And after you have finished all of the, for example, the data management plans, you have filled out all of the required section, and then you can actually download your fully written data management plans as either the CSV files, the HTML, the PDF, or any other relevant formats. And then you can also set your download to be the optional plan components. For example, the project details cover sheet, and the question text and the section headings, and unanswered questions. And you can also format your PDF based on preference. For example, for the font, we can choose the Times News Roman, which is more popular in the literature writing. And the size, we can increase the size from 11 to 12. And the margin, we can just leave it as default. And then we can just click download plan. And then you should be able to see the actual PDF. So what kind of PDF will be when you actually finished all of your details for the data management plans. So you can see my title is sample project, and then the data type here. So it's basically a summary of what you have filled out in this data management plan tools. And of course, the question was not answered because I didn't enter any words in the sections. So you can see basically this gave you a general overview of what will it be like when you finish all of the details. Yeah, so that's the data type, the related tools, software or code, and the standards and data preservation, access and associated timelines, the access, distribution or reuse considerations. And yeah, so that's basically follows the orders of the of the Dmp tool questions. Yeah, and you can also see the on the footnote, which is created using Dmp tool, and the last modified date, yeah, and the page number. So yeah, so it's pretty streamlined if you just follow the steps of the Dmp tools and fill out the relevant information, and then you will just get a clean PDF file so that you can accompany your this data management plans with your research proposals to be submitted to the funders. And next, finally, you can also finalize and publish your plan. For example, you can set your plan visibility to be either private, only visible to me, or specific collaborators and administrators at my organization, or anyone at my organization, or to entirely public, so that anyone can view your data management plan. And you can also register your plan and add it to your ORCID profile. So you can get a Dmp ID for your data management plan. But there are also some requirements that you need to satisfy in order to register your plan. For example, you need to answer at least 50% of questions and identify your funder and authorize Dmp tool to add works to your ORCID record. And the plan is not a mock project for testing practice, so it should be an actual plan. So once all of the steps above are satisfied, a button to register your plan will appear right below this sentence. Yeah, so that basically concludes today's session about data management tools. Yes, I hope this is helpful for your as you get started with writing your data management plans in the near future. Yeah, so yes, are there any last minute questions?